This is going to be episode number 4, and please want to remind everybody it is a public broadcast. You can find us on our Facebook page. You can also find us on unknownphilosophers.com. I'm Briggs Cunningham, your host tonight, broadcasting from the sun, also known as Arizona. We had about 105 today. And I'd like to introduce my co-host, Cosmo Magliazzi. What is up, my brother? How are you doing this evening?
Doing great, Brother Briggs. Tonight we have a very special guest. Tonight's guest is Scott Wolter. He's a forensic geologist and television host. He is well known for the best of the hosts of the series of the American Unearthed. Wolter he's based out of Minnesota, where he is the founder and president of the American Petrographic Services, and the inventor of the see if I can pronounce this word. Okay, there you go. Which is a process to use to date and understand the origins of encrypted stone artifacts, which is also one of my favorite things to see and learn about. In addition to investigating and dating ancient artifacts, Brother Wolter was involved in analyzing fire damages to the concrete at the Pentagon after September 11th, the terrorist attacks, and has even helped the Las Vegas police to investigate the homicide where a victim was found buried in concrete. His first television appearance was as at the Kensington runestone expert on the documentary Holy Grail in America, which is a lot of us probably saw that a few years ago, which indirectly resulted in Brother Wolter hosting American Unearthed. And he's also the author of several books on geology, the Knights Templar, and theories related to the pre-Columbian content. His new book, Cryptic Code of the Templars in America, The Origins of the Hood X, and of course a fellow brother Freemason. So yes. Without further ado, I would like to introduce Brother Scott Wolter.
Yay! Hi guys. Thanks for having me on tonight. I like this format. This is great. I can see who the people are that might be asking questions, and I think we're gonna have a good time tonight.
Fantastic. Yeah, it's new for all of us. Again, guys, I apologize. We'll get better at this. We're so excited to have you, Scott. I'm a big fan. Cosmo's a big fan. My dad is on here. Every time I get on the phone with him, we're talking about one of your shows.
Well, good. We're glad that that's one of the goals we had, was to prompt people to think and maybe look at things that they kind of thought they had an understanding about, looking at it from another perspective. And sometimes it's opened up things that we never dreamed were there and are there. So
yes. Let's go ahead and we'll start off with a first question here. What new developments can you share related to Templar artifacts that had previously been removed from Jerusalem and brought to America? And that comes from our brother Timothy Hogan.
Oh, Tim Hogan.
Yeah.
Oh, Brother Hogan is a very good friend, and he's being a little coy with that question, but you know, since we're talking mostly with brothers here anyway, I feel like I can be a little more candid than I otherwise would. Actually, even today and tonight, I was working on the next book, which is really a companion to Cryptic Code, because there has been actually, I guess I would say, 3 major sets of documents that deal directly with Templar activities in America that have come forward over the last 13 years ago. I got one group of documents. 4 years ago, I got another set of documents. And then about 7-8 years ago, another set of documents came forward that only now am I able to talk about. And part of the reason why I've been sitting on this stuff is because, quite frankly, it's almost too good to be true. So when something comes across that way, you have to be very careful about vetting them. The documents that came forward 13 years ago include something we call the Cremona Document. And Cremona is a city in Italy where these documents reportedly were housed for several centuries. And it came to the attention of a friend of mine. He's not a Freemason, but he did work in, he worked for a spy agency for most of his life. And one of his colleagues was able to come into these documents that he purchased, this Cremona document that he purchased in 1971 in Rome, Italy. And in it, there are, it's actually a compendium of multiple documents. One of those documents doesn't really have a title, but it is encoded in 3 different languages and written in Theban script, which is one of the coded scripts that the Templars used in medieval times. If you Google Theban script, it'll come up, but there's new versions of it and there's old versions of it. But in any case, this document was written in Theban, and it took a while for this guy, his name was Bill Jackson, to get deciphered. But the very first piece of information is a firsthand narrative by 3 different authors, 3 of the 6 knights that went under the south wall in Jerusalem sometime between 1110 and 1118. We're not sure what year it was, it's not dated, but they chronicle where they went in, their adventurous journey down to a crypt or a tomb that actually was just outside the footprint of the south wall. And they discovered in this tomb 4 ossuaries that were covered with lambskin. And they detail what was in them. And so I think this might be part of what Brother Tim is talking about. In the first ossuary, they found the remains of a person who's, and I might just read it to you exactly. Now, remember, this has been translated from Theban into 3 different languages. I forget what they are. Old English. Well, I can't find. I can't. Oh, here we go. Read this, but basically, what it says is carved on the side of the box is a name. And the knight describes the skeleton, that the head had been severed with a large, heavy axe, cleanly severed. And on the side of the box was the name Jan, written with a Y, presumably John the Baptist. And they took the bones. In the second ossuary, they found scrolls, 12 scrolls, inside clay tubes sealed with beeswax, and they were crushed lime and clay. It's what these clay tubes were made of. And inside were multiple scrolls. They don't really go into detail about what's in them. You learn later about what's in at least one of them. In the third box, there was gold, bars of gold with what I think were probably the Seal of Solomon or Star of David, depending on your point of view, stamped on them. And in the fourth box, they were excited. They thought there would be more gold. But getting back to the gold, one of the things that they said at the end of the entry was, this will help with the money moving plans. And you can interpret that however you want. In the fourth box, they thought there would be more gold, but when they pulled back the lambskin, they found 5 instruments that are described in great detail, to the point where Bill Jackson and some of his friends with the agency actually were able to reconstruct these, rebuild them. Two of the instruments were used in construction, building with stone. Two of them were navigation devices. One of them, I recall, was used to navigate using the planet Venus, which you don't hear too much about, but actually Venus is probably the most accurate heavenly body in the sky as far as its movements and the predictability of its movements. And ironically, just a few days ago, Venus was at its closest point to Earth in its 8-year cycle, and its brightest it'll be for 8 years. And I was fortunate enough, we had a clear night here. I had a spotting scope, and I was able to see her tips up, which a lot of people don't realize. Venus is a crescent, but you can't see it unless you use a spotting scope. And unlike the moon, whose tips are sideways, Venus's are up. So when you see that crescent with its tips up, a lot of people think it's the moon, and it's not. In any case, that was the fourth, that's 4 of the 5 instruments. And the last instrument that they found was a cryptex used for encoding various secret alphabets. So that's the answer to that question. Now, are there other treasures that the Templars brought over? Absolutely. I don't know if you want me to go into it, but that I can say with in a public forum because it's published now.
Fantastic. I'll leave it up to the audience if they want to ask more. I'll get to the second question here because it's going to add on to this one. Because this is something I've always believed in. My dad and I talk about it all the time, and their plan of setting up a nation here, basically, the Templars.
Did that happen?
And buried, yeah. They buried some gold somewhere on the East Coast, and guys have been picking some of that up lately, I guess.
Okay. Well, okay. So ask the question. I think I already know what it is, but I'll answer it. And
we'll
answer it. And I'm going to be very frank.
Is the connection to with the natives? I'm sorry, and the connection to with the Native Americans. I know. I grew up here in Arizona. I see the symbols everywhere. So, I'll let you answer there.
So I guess your question was there a connection with the early Templars that came here with the intent of forming a new nation, a place where they could live in freedom from the tyranny of the monarchs of Europe and the persecution of the Roman Catholic Church? Are there any parallels there to something you might have heard about called the Constitution? Yeah, I mean, in all honesty, that's one of the things that I'm hoping to do with a lot of this research that we're doing now. Things like the Kensington runestone, the Spirit Pond runestones, the Narragansett runestone, the Westford Knight, the Newport Tower are just some of the many artifacts that have been staring at people for centuries. But you know, they can't lift the frickin' veil off their face to see what's slapping them in the face. This is just some of the evidence that was left behind by our brethren. But getting back to the question of the indigenous people of this continent, who in their right mind would think that anybody coming from anywhere is going to do anything on this continent unless you have a relationship with the indigenous people that are already here? It's crazy that nobody ever talks about this. It was one of the first questions that I asked myself when I came to the conclusion based on the evidence that the runestone was an authentic artifact. Because here are some facts that are undeniable based on that conclusion. First, somebody carved it. They came from somewhere, not here, Europe, and they came here for some reason, okay? Undeniable. Those things are facts. And so that's the journey that I then set upon to try to answer those questions, because that's what I do, is forensic investigations. But the indigenous people played a key role, and I cannot emphasize the role that they played enough. But what's important to understand is that the true ideology of the Templars, who venerated the goddess and pretended to be Catholic, right? Using things like the Virgin Mary. Oh, they had no problem venerating Mary. The question was, which Mary were they venerating? Well, it wasn't the one the church was thinking about. But the same is true with the indigenous people over here. Most people don't realize they are matriarchal. They venerate the great goddess. They practice rituals and put on degrees, just like we do. And they're not similar, they're the same. They have their own secret society. It's called the Medewin. And that was the common denominator that they shared. When I, several years ago, participated in a Medewin sweat, I had to earn the right to ask my questions. And when I finally earned that right, and I was told by the medicine man leading the sweat, Scott, go ahead and ask your questions. And I said, do you know anything about the Templars? And he looked at me and he said, you mean our blood brothers? I don't know what more needs to be said.
Yeah, I have a great friend. He's a filmmaker up in the Navajo Nation in the Four Corners, Shoney, and he's Jewish. And I asked him, where'd you get that from? You know, and just a wonderful human being. Gosh, I love the work you do. I could ask you a million more questions. Cosmo, let me hand it over to you. I know you have a question for Scott as well.
Yeah, one of the questions that I had is, you know, I know you've done a lot of research on when the Holy Grail in America, when they were talking about Columbus and the British, they just touched the iceberg. Have you done any work on Vespucci himself? Because I know that a lot
Americo Vespucci?
Yes.
Honestly, no, I have not. I know that there were a lot of other trips that took place during the 15th, 16th, and 17th centuries that we don't know much about. We know a little bit about these activities, there's a lot going on. And you have to remember, you know, we focus so hard on North America, but there was a lot going on in South America, maybe even more in some ways, because a lot of the age of exploration took place down off the coast of Portugal. And you know, they're already down in that southern hemisphere. You know, you go right across and the Atlantic and you're in South America, and there's a lot going on there. There's a lot of wealth, a lot of things that would have been just as attractive for Europeans as there would be in North America. You don't have to deal with the rough weather of the North Atlantic. So as far as Americo Vespucci goes, I'm not an expert on him. I just haven't spent the time. There's so many explorers and so little time in a person's life.
That's cool. And one of the other questions that I had, which is just based on my trip to Roslyn, was the magnetic field. I don't know if you experienced that down in the vault. The first time I experienced it was when Jeffrey Spence took me to the north corner of it, and he was holding my Masonic pendulum, and it started basically just moving at his will. I mean, that's how he did it. And then I did it for myself, and it worked out the same way. And I think there might be some kind of correlation between what's there and some other parts or some other sites that you might have visited maybe around the world.
Sure. Yeah, I think what you're talking about is some people call them ley lines, and they're basically lines of higher magnetic energy that encircle the world, both you know, in various directions. And where these lines of energy, let's call them, intersect, is often where you can go back in time, thousands and thousands of years, where human cultures, and hell, maybe even animals for that matter, recognize that these were points of high energy. And this is where we find places where people would pray. they would build structures for worship and you know, early Celtic sites that then became Christian churches, and in many cases, cathedrals are all built along these intersecting lines of energy. And I don't think there's any doubt that Roslyn was put where it was for this reason and for others, of course, to make it good sight lines and everything else. But are there high energy fields that are going on at these sacred sites? There's no question about it.
Do you think maybe the some of those earlier Templar sites here in America that you discovered, like the Kensington Stone, perhaps, or the Newport Tower, might have a similar effect? There might be on these ley lines.
Pardon my French. Hell yes. I mean, come on. The Newport Tower is some people believe is a portal to other dimensions. And you know, while we're on that topic, I don't know if stop me if you've heard this story. And I don't tell this to too many people because I'm supposed to be a scientist and I have to be able to explain everything. And I can't explain this one. In 2007, we were at a point in our research. We were, I think, you know, looking back, making some pretty profound discoveries. And one of those was this illumination event that happens at the Newport Tower on December 21st, the winter solstice, that happened at exactly 9 o'clock in the morning, when the rising sun, the light of the sun coming through the south window creates a light box that at 8 o'clock goes through the west window, creating its own alignment. And then that light box starts to move to the north and south as the sun rises. It rotates in that window. And then at exactly 9 o'clock, it frames out an egg-shaped keystone that happens to have megalithic dimensions, megalithic yard dimensions. And at exactly 9 o'clock, it frames out this light tan colored stone that illuminates like a laser beam. And on the winter solstice at 9 o'clock, an important time of medieval monastic prayer, which of course the Templars were. Now, some people have claimed this to be a coincidence, and I think it took me 10 minutes to stop laughing when somebody said that to me. But what happened was I documented that by myself, and because nobody knew about it at the time. And it was about 8:15 when I came around the corner. I walked up to the tower and I saw the light box just coming out of the west window, and I set up my camera, and I was going to take, you know, still shots every few minutes and catch the progression of the light box and hopefully illuminate. I had made arrangements with the city of Newport. I got a key to get inside the fence, to get inside the tower. And once I was all set up and I took my first picture at about 8:15, I relaxed. And then I heard a voice behind me. It said, "What are you doing in there?" And I turned around, and there was this beautiful woman standing there, probably about 35. And she was kind of looking at me like, "You're not supposed to be in there," you know. She was a local walking her dog. And I looked at her and I said, "Well, it's kind of a long story." And she said, "I've got time." So I told her the whole story. I said, "You see that egg right there, and you see that light box? I think that's going to light." And she says, "Well, I got to stick around for this." So her dog was running around, and I was explaining to her all the research. She listened very attentively and was very nice. And then all of a sudden, when it happened, you know, that was a moment of validation for me. It was a feeling that is really hard to describe. And of course, I was all excited. I took my picture, and she looked at me and she said, "You know, that's fantastic. Congratulations." She said, "You know, I work in public relations. Would you like me to take a picture of you with that in the background?" And I said, "Sure." And I pulled out my backup camera I had in my pocket, and she took a picture of me standing there with the illuminated egg in the background. And then she gave me the camera back, and I said, "Thanks," you know, and just a second, and I wanted to take some pictures of it going off. So I was continuing to take pictures. I turned away from her. I took the picture, turned back around. Gone. The dog was gone. And my first reaction when I turned around was, well, that was rude. And then I started looking like in the park. It was in the middle of the park. Nothing. And she did not have time to walk away. Literally, it was 5 seconds. And I sat there for a minute, and then all of a sudden I got this cold chill down my back. And I've been going back to the tower now for 13 years in a row. On my birthday, it's a present I give to myself because I was born on December 21st.
Wow.
You get this.
Wow.
At 8:50 in the morning. It's my birthday. So you can't make it up, right? Anyway, I've gone back for 13 years in a row because I want to see if that woman comes back. The problem is it has now become a pilgrimage site for a lot of the local brothers. This year, there was over 200 people there on the solstice, and including about 6 knights who came in full regalia, who lined up around the front where you view the illumination and were guarding the tower. And the local indigenous people represented the Wampanoag tribe. One of my good friends is Chief Black Eagle. His white name is Daryl Jameson. He and his war chief, and they came to represent the local tribe.
That's incredible.
Wow.
That's incredible. Those moments of
By the way,
awe.
hold on one sec. I gotta
Yeah.
show. I gotta show you something. Hold on. A lot of people doubt this story, right? And so what I say to them is, then why do I not have a photo credit for that picture?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's beautiful. Oh my goodness.
She took that picture, but there's no photo credit because I don't know who to credit.
You know, that's the beautiful thing about this group. What you just shared with us is kind of what we've experienced with the dinner parties. And I want to thank you so much for sharing that, because everybody in this group, this is what we're looking for. We're looking for that awe in life. And I've had mystery people show up and disappear. And maybe she was just telling you, hey, this is your last time to be here alone because, you know, it's going to be a celebration from here on out.
That's what my wife Janet said. She said, hey,
Yeah.
you know, you keep going back to the tower, but there's always people there now. And I have to say, I'm really inspired by that, because I think, well, I know a lot of it has to do with our research and people, you know, finding something spiritually important enough for them to be there, right?
Absolutely.
And thing that is a connection to our, what I would say is our Templar brethren in the 14th century, or right around 1400 is when they built the tower. And so if we played any role in that, I'm thrilled.
That's fantastic.
Maybe we can show up there on June 24th and see what other
Do it.
On the summer solstice, John the Baptist Day.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Might do the trick. Well, I can tell you this. I remember her face, and I hope to see it again someday, because I'm going to say, "Who are you?"
She's going to say, Sophia. Oh,
Sophia,
no.
there you go. Exactly.
Oh,
Well,
man. Well,
anyway.
let's, Cosmo, unless you've got anything else, let's open it up to the brothers and the group here and
Sure.
see if anybody has a question. We'll just kind of, you know, take your, unmute yourself there, and we'll just kind of, it always works out. Normally somebody will talk and give the other person a chance, and people kind of just jump in. The timing seems to work perfect. So somebody, if they want to jump in here and ask Scott a question, please do.
Brother Scott, it's David Fierro from Phoenix. Hope you're well. My regards to Janet.
Hey, how you doing?
Excellent. Listen, there's been some, I just read some discoveries at Göbekli Tepe. I don't know if you follow that or you want to elaborate on that, and anything you'd like to share.
Well, I don't want to pretend like I'm an expert on Göbekli Tepe, but I certainly have paid attention to some of the research. And there's really a lot to unpack with Göbekli Tepe. I mean, I think at the end of the day, what they're going to discover is that it's essentially an observatory, its own Newport Tower, if you will, that is much grander on a much larger scale, much older than the tower, obviously. But I think that's really what the conclusion is going to be drawn from the research. And what it tells us is that a lot of the things that we're all, as Freemasons, especially people that are into the esoteric topics, I think what we all understand is that eventually everything goes back to the heavens, right? As above, so below. And this is not something that is new. This is something that humans have been messing around with, trying to make that connection for as long as humans have been here. And as far as my understanding goes, Göbekli Tepe was covered up over 12,000 years ago. And you know that if they were studying the heavens to the level that they obviously were, I have no doubt that they're going to find that the alignments and the technology employed to build Göbekli Tepe was extremely complicated, extremely detailed, with advanced mathematics, geometry, astronomy, trigonometry, everything. I have no doubt this is what they're going to uncover. And what I think it tells us is that these people were probably practicing the craft that we as esoteric Masons are trying to understand. And that it's really a connection going back. And look, it was covered up 12,000 years ago, which means it's much older than that. And that there was a high culture that existed. Some people might call them the Atlanteans, call them whatever you want. But I don't believe that these people were in one specific area. I think they were all across the world. But something catastrophic happened. I know that people like Graham Hancock and Randall Carlson and Robert Schock, a geologist who I know personally and greatly respect, have different theories about what catastrophic event might have happened. Maybe both. We've had that discussion. But something happened that caused a huge correction. But that knowledge that these people clearly had somehow survived. And I would like to believe is going to blossom on a bigger scale than just within the craft and certain groups that find this stuff interesting. I think it's important. I think we need to look closer into it. We are, but I think more people should. I don't know. Does that answer your question?
Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay. Great question, by the way.
Anybody else have a question?
I have a thank you, a comment, and a question. Is that okay? Is that allowed? I want to say thank you for what you explained at the beginning for the about the Venus crescent with the points up. That was awesome. So that's my thank you. My comment is that based on what we know about the Templars and Christopher Columbus, the Portuguese, and being involved in Brazil, the Spanish, all over Central and South America. To me, I really suspect there's much there that we haven't uncovered, and we need somebody to research that. So I was really happy to hear your comments and the question about South America. And my question is, can you say something? Are you familiar with research into Christopher Columbus's family ties, I think mostly through his wife, to Templarism?
Right, yeah. Specifically, thank you, Elena, that was a great question. And, I think you bring up something that's really important. I have focused primarily on the North Atlantic, North America, and the Scottish, primarily the Scottish trips to North America, but believe me, that's not the whole story by any means. There's all kinds of other groups, other Templar groups that came to Central America for sure, because I've been to Central America, different parts, and I can tell you there's a lot of wealth there and a lot of gold there. And gold is very important, not just because it's shiny and valuable. It also occurs in other forms and can be used for other things that are just as important as its metallic form. Well, actually, it's more important in powdered form. And I think you know what I'm talking about. But there's a lot more work to be done in Central America and South America that has to do with the Templars. That's fertile ground. I don't know if I'm going to live long enough to delve too deeply into it. I got so much going on in North America. I got my, but anyway, getting back to your question about the Drummond family, on Columbus's wife's side, you know, his father-in-law was a sea captain. He was a Templar, and Columbus inherited all of his sea charts and maps. And all I can tell you is Columbus didn't discover anything. He was following in the footsteps of those who came before him, as we all do, right? It's ridiculous to think that North America, South America was unknown to people in Europe. They've known about it for thousands of years. It was just held secret for good reason. So. But yeah, that's that connection there. You're right on. I laugh. I always say, you mean, when they talk about Chris, I say, oh, you mean that guy who never set foot on the continent that he supposedly discovered that already had millions of people living here? You mean that guy? Anyway, did that answer your question, Elena?
Yes, thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Yeah, Elena, I don't know if you've seen the episode with Scott where he's in Portugal. That's my favorite episode, Scott, when you're showing, like, I think it's the 9 keystones, and then the ritual, and they put the guy down in the vault in the ground.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, man, that was my favorite.
That was really good stuff,
time.
Wasn't it?
Oh, it was.
Yeah,
It was so
you know what's funny about that is I was there. That wasn't for America Unearthed. That was for a different show. That was for Pirate Treasure of the Knights Templar. And what happened was they had, you know, a local person who spoke the language and could interact with the people that in Tomar, which was the Templar city built in 1161. But in any case, he was a Templar and a Freemason, and I wasn't at the time. But we got along really well, and he said, I would like to show you some things. And that's when he took me down there. And I knew enough to be dangerous. I understood the numbers and everything. And he was the one that showed me that underground ritual room is really what it was, where the Templar Knights became knights in their final ritual, where they had to spend 3 nights under, you know, they pull the stones out, they put them in this chamber, they cover up the stones, they leave them with bread and water. And if they call out to be taken out, then they don't pass the test. That's the physical test. But if they do last to the third day, they're taken out, and then they are asked a series of questions when they're in a depleted state, right? And if they answer those correctly, they are then directed to look above, and there you see the sun and a rose, 5-petaled rose, symbolic of Venus, the goddess, and dualism and all of that. It was a beautiful ritual, and I really appreciate that he explained that to me, even though I was not a brother at the time.
That's amazing. One of Cosmo and I's dreams are to travel and do some, you know, this is public, so I can't talk about our rituals in Masonry, but oh my goodness, could you imagine setting up a 3rd degree ritual there?
I'll tell you what,
wow.
It was amazing.
Wow.
Even the steps were not spaced on purpose to sort of throw the candidate off. So he's thinking about walking and not about what's happening around, you know, because there's a whole line of knights with their swords, you know, and he walks under them. and he apparently doesn't even know they're all there, right? It's just amazing.
We got Mr. George Brooks has a question.
All right.
Hello there. You know, this is my first time doing a Zoom, so if I've pushed the wrong buttons, I apologize completely. I was madly searching in my own laptop trying to find the name of this site in Connecticut that you had been to, Scott. It was the monastic cell where light beamed through a hole and went into another little corner of the monastic cell. Do you remember the name of that site?
Are you talking about America's Stonehenge?
There's a native term they use for it, megawamp or something.
Or are you? Oh no! You're talking about Gunjiwamp.
Thank you, sir.
Yes,
Gunjiwamp.
that's down.
Now,
That's down in near New London in Groton, Connecticut. And yes,
right.
Now I know what you're talking about. Yes.
I had the good fortune to talk to the person you were with about you putting that show together.
Was that
And
Stephen Sora?
I'm not sure. It's all in my notes, but
Okay.
I think he might be in law enforcement, but I guess a professor has died since you've been there too. But anyway, the thing
I know who you're talking about. You're probably talking about Vance Teedy is the guy who's the expert that has been involved with Gunjiwamp. I've known Vance for many years. And the person you're talking about that passed away was a brother, actually, William Penhallow, who was a professor of astronomy at the University of Rhode Island. And he passed away about 6 to 8 months ago. And he was the one that really did, the first work and the most definitive work on the astronomical alignments in the Newport Tower. And he was a brilliant guy. And I remember about 5 years ago, I went to visit him. He was suffering with Alzheimer's, and he was, he struggled his last few years. But I went down to see him about 5 years ago, and I took him on a road trip back up to the tower. He hadn't been to the tower in a number of years. And it was funny, we were talking, and he was not, certainly not as well as I've seen him. But when we got to the tower, we started to talk about his work. Boy, he just sharpened right up, and I think he enjoyed that visit. But Bill Penhallow is who you're thinking of.
Well, the point I'd like to make about that show that I unfortunately never got to see was apparently they didn't give you the time you needed to explore some of the other parallels. But, about what the Culdy Irish priests might have done to design a monastic cell. And they were talking about how the light would cross through. And I said, well, and they mentioned one of the illuminated manuscripts that seemed to relate to this, right? And so I asked, well, what's the name of the illuminated manuscript? And I went right to it while I was on the phone using my laptop. And there was a picture of a monk holding 2 sunflowers with very long stems, and they were crossed.
Yes,
I
know the image. I know the image.
How can they have ignored this and gone on to who knows what? I mean, they really kind of had you captive, I guess, in the show.
Well, let's just say that one of my frustrations with television, and before I say this, I just want to say that I was treated very well. I continue to be treated very well by the networks that I work with. And above all else, I appreciate the opportunity to get as much of this important content, what I think is important, out to the world. But you have to understand that television is a business. And the level that we can go to is limited by, it's not an audience like this.
Right.
It appeals to people that there's nothing wrong with these people. It's just, you just can't go to the level I would like to go. So I do get frustrated, but I will tell you this. When we were on H2, we did 3 seasons there and 39 episodes of America Unearthed, and we were the #1 show on the network at the time. And then they sold H2. We never were canceled. They sold it. And so I remember my agent said, well, I don't know who doesn't renew their #1 show. We'll just wait and I'll move you over to Big History. And that's when I did Pirate Treasure of the Knights Templar. They were having trouble getting content, so they asked me if I would help out. And they said, we'd like you to bring some Templar content. What should we do? And I said, well, the story starts in Jerusalem. Let's go there. And honestly, we were making it up as we went along, but it was great. But anyway, after we were done shooting that, my agent called me and they said, they're not going to pick you up on Big History. And I said, really? I said, why not? And this is what they said. They said, because your show's too smart for history. And they were right. They were right. But again, I appreciate it. And so, you know, that's part of the reason why the content isn't always to my liking, but I also have realized that you don't get everything in life. And there's always a trade-off, right? So, like I say, I'm just happy that we were able to get as much out, you know, that we have so far, but there's more coming, so stay tuned.
Thank you.
Mr. Matt Parker.
Scott, Briggs, I'm sorry, I apologize. My camera, I think it may have been an accident, says it was disabled by a host, and I know I'm not the best looking guy on here, so you know I completely
I think
understand.
I saw your face. I think I saw your face,
you.
Matt. You're a good looking guy. Stop that.
Yeah, you'll have nightmares later. I read recently about, well, I've started looking into the relationship between Sufism and some of the rituals in Masonry. And I know the Sufi sect was only about 100 years old or so when the Knights first went to Jerusalem. Is there any evidence that there was some kind of connection or that they had interacted and maybe picked up some of these things?
Well, I think the answer to that is hell yes. I don't think there's any doubt about that. There are certain traditions out there that know a lot more about this than me. One person that would be really good to talk to about this is Tim Hogan. He knows all about this. But one thing, you know, I'll just tell you in a general sense. Let me just give you an example. I think that would go back to people like the Sufis and the Eastern religions and initiates that were interacting with the Templars during the time of the Crusades. The Kensington runestone has 14 numbers on it. Those numbers are something called pentatic numbers. Pentatic numbers are Arabic in origin, which begs the question, what the hell is an Arabic numbering system doing on a Scandinavian runestone? Who interacted with the Arabs that would interact at a level where they would be sharing knowledge and not fighting all the time, right? Who does that? We do that, right? The Templars did that with the goal of learning as much as they could from people that had a different knowledge base. And I'm sure they taught their brothers, Sufi brothers, and other traditions that they interacted with. They shared knowledge. My personal belief is that the Crusades, the Templars, controlled the Holy Land for a period of time, rounded up the stuff that they wanted, and then when they had satisfactorily completed their mission, they weren't defeated and kicked out. They gave it up because they no longer needed to control the Holy Land at that time because it wasn't in the long-range plan. And if you recall earlier tonight, I mentioned in the Cremona Document, after they found the gold, they said this will help with the money-moving plans. And I believe that their goal of establishing the New Jerusalem in North America, in consort with their brothers, their blood brothers, the indigenous people, who, if you spend any time at all understanding how they operate, it's a pretty damn cool way of life. And if there's anybody on this planet that knows how to live in balance with the planet, spend some time with indigenous people that are truly enlightened. They know how to live in balance. And I think that's what the Templars wanted to do. And they did. They did it. And they turned that obligation over to our founding fathers, who finished the job. And we're living in it right now. Now, I would also argue that in the 250 or so years since this country was founded, we've lost our way a little bit, especially now. And I'm not trying to get into politics, but we are not a Roman Christian nation. You can be a Roman Christian, that's fine. But I get the feeling sometimes that certainly the tolerance that was always one of the things that I loved about Freemasonry before I became a Freemason just doesn't seem to be where it should be right now. So I personally think that a lot of this research that we're doing, and not just myself, but my wife and many other people that are doing really, really good work about bringing this truth forward about what really happened here, which includes the indigenous people. Their story needs to be told. They need to be acknowledged for the commitment that they made to our early brethren, to those Templars when they came here, going back to the very beginning of this interview, and the treasures that they brought here, which I'm sorry to tell you, they did not put on Oak Island. And they sure as hell didn't put all their eggs in one basket, because the Templars aren't stupid. But many of those treasures were recovered to fund the revolution. And for centuries, those treasures were guarded by the indigenous people because they said they would. And we need to acknowledge that. And we need to be honest about the way they were treated. And you know what happens when you screw up and you apologize? People forgive. And I think we need to do some of that. And maybe we can turn the ship around, because in my personal opinion, I think the ship has taken on water. And part of the way that we can bail it out is by revealing the truth about how this whole great experiment came to be. All right, that's my speech. I'm sorry.
That's why we have this platform here. That's why Cosmo and I created it.
That's a great question, though.
We want people to be free on this platform. Anybody else? And I agree with you. Again, growing up here in Arizona, I've been in a sweat before, a real heavy one, where if I had not separated from the mind, if I had not known how to do that and be myself, I would not have survived. Right? And it's a miracle you can sit in there. It's a miracle you can sit in that heat. It's incredible. It's like a ritual.
And not just that. I mean, you're 100% right. But I was a little nervous going in. And I remember him telling me, well, we're only doing 8 stones or 9 stones. I didn't realize it at the time because I wasn't a Mason. I would have thought of the Royal Arch. But, you know, he was like, dude, this is nothing, right? And I was in there for like 2 hours. And when I came out, I'm like, I could have kept going, you know, it was weird. And I didn't really, you know, I wasn't thinking about actually separating myself. I was just trying to just be calm. But, you know, what was happening, the interactions that were happening, I forgot all about the heat. And he would take cedar, you know, and he would dip it in the water and whoosh. You know.
Oh, every time he did that, I was like, no, don't do it again.
Yeah, I know. But I
had to shut it down.
I was covered with sweat, but it didn't bother me. It didn't bother me.
All right. Who's got another question for Scott?
I've got a question real quick, if that's just a real quick question on leylands for Scott. If you have any recent information on leylands or research, or have you kind of looked into leylands of the earth?
Are you talking about ley lines?
Ley lines, thank you.
Yeah. Well, you know, I haven't done a lot of detailed research on it. All I know is that they represent lines of increased magnetic, activity and in the atmosphere and going right down into the ground. And where they intersect, we have, you know, higher energy. I mean, places like Serpent Mound in Ohio, Cahokia has very high energy. And what's interesting is there are certain people that have an ability to tap into these energies and can locate these these sites. I'm not one of those people. I don't have that ability, but I know people who do. And, you know, it's on one hand, you know, some people think it's some spiritual thing that people are picking up on, but no, I think there's a real scientific basis, and that it's a real thing that's going on in our earth, or on our earth. And you know, animals can pick up on these different levels of energy, and we're animals, so we should be able to as well. Some people are better at it than others. I'm not very good at it, but I know people who are. So that's about as far as I can take it, really.
Thank you. Is there maybe a scientist you just off the top that, or a place maybe, or a group that looks at the more scientific side of those ley lines?
I suspect there are. I don't know who they are off the top of my head,
cool.
But I would be shocked if there weren't. And although I wish I could give you a reference or a recommendation, I just don't know anybody off the top of my head. I'm sorry.
It's all good. I'll take it to the internet. Thank you, Scott.
Okay, thanks. Good question.
I got a question. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Hey, Scott, this is Brother Richard from California. Good to talk to you again. I know earlier in the show you had mentioned that you were well on your Grail quest, temple journey, before you joined a Masonic lodge. Now that you are a Mason, have certain things, has things changed in the way you look at things? Is there different things that you look at differently now?
Well, the answer to that is a big yes. You know, I was talking with, before we had this meeting, I was talking with another brother in Arizona, Ed Martinez, who's actually a psychologist by education, but he's a Mason, he's Scottish Rite, York Rite, Rosicrucian, a bunch of other stuff, but a really enlightened brother. And, you know, he and I were talking today and about how there's so few people in our work, you know, our individual worlds, our friends and associates that we can talk to about these types of things and talk about spirituality, talk about sacred geometry, talk about the Templars, all of this stuff, which to me is endlessly fascinating. And sometimes I'll sit back and I kick myself. I go, what the hell was I doing for 50 years prior to this? I should have become a Mason much sooner. But you know what? It happens when it happens. And in many ways, I think I'm glad I did it the way I did. I studied Freemasonry because in my research with the rune stone and the Newport Tower and all of that, it just kept coming up. So I figured I had to learn about it. And then I actually reached out to some Masons. The funny thing was, I'll tell you this, when I was giving my lectures on the runestone for almost 10 years, there was a guy who kept showing up at my lectures, and he would always sit in the back. He had glasses and long gray hair, and he would just watch. And about the third or fourth time that he came to a lecture, I went up to him after the lecture and I said, "You're a Freemason, aren't you?" He said, "Yes, I am." And he goes, "Are you guys watching me?" And he kind of laughed. He said, "Well, I am." And I said, "Well, how am I doing?" He said, "Good. Keep doing what you're doing." Well, I now know that Brother Mark Campbell, who's a 33rd, a very enlightened brother, been a Mason for almost 50 years. You know, it's opened me up to so many wonderful things. I can't tell you, and enriched me, I think, as a person. I just wished I would have joined earlier, but like I said, it happens when it's supposed to. And I look forward to many more good years of interacting with brothers from all around the world. It's just an amazing thing. And you know it as a Mason, that when you meet another Mason, you've experienced something that most other people haven't. So you're automatically at a level here instead of starting off at zero. You have a lot in common, not a little bit, a lot. You know that person is open-minded. You know that person is going to have some basic decency about them. And then after that, it's easy. So yeah, I've learned a lot. My life has been greatly enriched by Freemasonry, and I look forward to more to come.
Man, that
Hey,
was
Brother
wonderful.
Scott, when was the moment, Brother Scott?
Yeah.
When was the moment you decided to become a Freemason?
Well, I think I'm trying to remember the moment. I think, you know, one of the things I probably would have joined earlier, but when I was doing America Unearthed, I kind of said to myself, I don't want to be a Mason because I don't want people to think that I'm biased towards the Masons, right? But after a while, when I got to the point, I started thinking about it. I go, you know what? The people that support me, do they care if I'm a Freemason? No. And the people that don't support me, do I give a rat's you know what if they care? No. And then I said, screw it, I'm going to do it. And that was in 2015. And I haven't looked back. I will say this, though. I took, I'd finished America Unearthed. They said they weren't going to renew us. So I had a little bit of time. And I said, I'm going to do it. So I did my Blue Lodge. I was raised as a Mason November 15th. 2 weeks later, I started the Scottish Rite degrees. And then a week after that, I started the York Rite degrees. And I just went straight through and did them all. It was like drinking Freemasonry through a fire hose. Hang on one sec. I'll be right back. I'm just about back here. I'm just plugging in the cord.
And hey, guys, we're at the top of the hour here.
There we go. There we go.
So we're at the top of the hour here. If anybody has any last questions for Scott, please go for it, and then we'll go ahead and we'll do a close here.
Yes, hello.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, I have two. Yes, I have two questions. The first question is, did you find any evidence that the mounds of North America are burial sites? And two, are there any loose links to the founding fathers and Akhenaten?
Well, yeah, Akhenaten is a great question. That's I love the subject of Akhenaten. But getting back to the mounds, the earthworks in North America, I have a good friend who's an indigenous brother. He's also a Freemason. His name is Taylor Keene, and he's in the midst of writing a book about the mounds, and he, you know, he comes to it obviously from an indigenous perspective, and he has been through. He's also Meday. He's part of the Native Secret Society. So, but he's also just a really, really fun guy to be around. And basically, the lecture that he gives talks about the mound structures all being a continuation across the continent of interconnecting constellations that follow the zodiacal belt. And so your question about burials are, the mounds are different things. Some are for burials, some are for ritual, some are for alignments. But I can tell you that the mounds are extremely complex in their configuration, in their dimensions. There's, as I said before, mathematics, astronomy, trigonometry, geometry that we can barely comprehend. And the level of understanding that the indigenous people have is profound. And I can't help but think about how we labeled them as savages. It's no different than calling a woman a whore or somebody a witch or a heretic. It's just a way to justify persecution. But the mounds, and they're ancient. Many of them date back thousands and thousands of years. And so who were these people? Were they part of this high culture that I talked about, and the indigenous people are their descendants? I think so. And I think a lot of that knowledge has been retained within their own secret societies, much like Freemasonry. So but some are for ritual, some are for burial, some are for astronomical purposes that are very complex. As far as the founding fathers in Akhenaten, I think we have bloodline connections. We certainly have connections of knowledge. I mean, Akhenaten is an important pharaoh because he was the one that came to power at the time of the change of the primary constellation of the zodiac being Taurus the bull to Aries the ram. That's why he's got the crook and the flail. The flail herds the bulls, the followers of Taurus, and the crook herds the rams, the sheep of Aries, symbolic of the followers of the new religion of Aries, and crossed on his chest represented his attempt to unite the two religions. So in some ways you could say that our founding fathers were trying to unite all these different people, under one nation, under one philosophy and ideology. I'm not going to use the word religion because that's not the right word. So I guess that's a loose connection between them, but I think that as we go forward, if we do have the correct body of Akhenaten, which some people believe we do, the genetics might show some bloodline connections too. How about that?
That was a great question. That would be incredible. That would be something. I love studying the ancient Egyptian history and Akhenaten. It's phenomenal. We'll have to have you on again sometime soon, Scott. This has been phenomenal. Cosmo, what do you got for us? You got any last questions?
Not right now, but I'm formulating some research that I want to do that I may, next time we get Scott on, I may have some questions, some follow-up questions for him.
Okay. Hey, this was a lot of fun, guys. I appreciate this. And it's fun to see the people that, have questions. I can see what they're doing, and it's kind of a nice vibe. I feel like we're all sitting in a room having a conversation, and but yet we're practicing, proper social distancing and doing our duty here. So this has been a lot of fun. Thank you.
Yeah, everybody here is a big fan of yours. We love work. We just want you to know that we're a frat, the people out there that follow you, and we're always excited to hear about what you're doing next. We want to sincerely thank you for joining us tonight. You can find all of Scott's books on Amazon.com. Just go to Amazon and search for his name. You can find him on Facebook.
Hey, can I just interrupt for a sec, Briggs? If people are interested in getting signed copies of the book, you can certainly get them on Amazon. But if you go to my website, www.hookedx.com, HOOKEDX.com, I sign every book that's bought off the website. So if you're interested, and my wife's book, American Nation of the Goddess. So I'm sorry to interrupt you, but
no, please.
Yeah,
fantastic. I'll have to get one for my dad signed for sure. Also find Scott on the travelchannel.com. A lot of his shows are on there. He's got some new ones coming up. Man, we can't wait for that. Also, too, I found scottwalteranswers.blogspot.com. If you want to connect with Scott, he's very available for you. I was really excited to see this. So that's a place that you can find some stuff from Scott as well. hookedx.com. I want to thank our brothers at Refracted Light, which is a Facebook page. Any brothers out there, check out that page. These guys are letting us know every day what kind of events are going on online. And I feel like the Neo of Freemasonry, I think you guys do too, because all week with this COVID thing, that's all we've been doing is communicating and just learning so much from each other. You can look for this episode number 4 coming up. We'll have it posted in a couple of days. Saturday, May 23rd, 10 a.m. Mountain Standard, we have Peter Dawkins from London. You can check out his bio on our Facebook page. He's the founder and principal at the Francis Bacon Research Trust. He's got a lot of good information. And that's about it. Scott, if you've got anything else to leave us with, best wishes to everybody. I hope everybody stays safe, and we're going to recover from this. I know we will, because we have it in our soul and our spirit. And I just wish you guys a great week. God bless. And any last words, Cosmo or Scott, and I'll end the meeting.
Okay. Next time we get together, I want you to ask me to read a letter from Brother Albert Pike.
Oh, wonderful.
And all I'll say is that there were, I told you that there was a group of documents that came out 8 years ago. There were some letters written by Albert Pike that have never been published before. They were actually found in Canada. And one of the letters is unbelievable. That's all I'm going to say. You
Can't wait.
But I'll read it for you, and you're going to be blown away.